Hey there, creepy peeps. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome back. If you are returning, we all are supposed to stay inside. So here are some movies that you can watch to pass the time. I do hope everybody is staying safe and healthy out there, given what's going on in the world. It's a little bit scary. But hopefully, if you're able to, you're staying inside as much as you possibly can. And lucky for us, in 2020, we have so many things that can keep us occupied. We got books, we got streaming services out the wazoo, we got YouTube, we got podcasts, there's plenty of stuff to keep us occupied. As horror fans, I feel like one of the things we do a lot to pass the time is watch movies because we love horror movies. So I thought I would give you guys some underrated, what I think are underrated gems or hidden gems, whatever you want to call them. Hopefully you haven't heard of at least one of these movies and I've introduced you to at least one thing that's new to you. So all of these movies are available on Shudder right now. Shudder is an American streaming service. It's basically like the Netflix for horror. So sorry if you're not in the US. Unless you have a VPN, I guess. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know exactly how VPNs work. So I don't know. Maybe you can hack into Shudder. Is that what you're doing? I don't really know. So if you like this, let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do this for other streaming services like Tubi, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Vudu, YouDo. I thought I would start with Shudder because I love Shudder. This is not sponsored by them. I know it maybe kind of sounds like it is. It's not. But Shudder, hit me up. So the first movie that I want to talk to you guys about is Incident in a Ghostland. This movie follows a mother and her two daughters moving into a new home. On their first night, 3 murderous intruders break in. 16 years later, the daughters reunite at the house and things get strange. Fortunately, I don't want to get too much into this movie. I can, I just don't want to because I feel like it's one of those movies that you just need to sit down and watch, and it's much better if you haven't had anything spoiled for you and you don't know what the end is, you don't know what the twist is. Maybe there are parts of this movie that are a little bit cliche, but I feel like they took something that is kind of cliche and still ended up making it unique because of like the plot of the movie and the characters. So yeah, it's like quasi cliche. The movie also just looks great, very atmospheric. I love the setting. I'm doing a great job of selling this, aren't I? I just don't want to talk about the twist, but there's a really good twist. So just watch it, okay? Next film I want to talk to you about is The Love Witch. This movie follows Elaine, a witch who is just looking for love, and she finds many potential suitors, but her love spells are just a little bit too potent and she ends up with a long list of victims instead. I've talked about this movie many times before. Anytime it's pertinent for me to talk about this movie, I do, because I love it so much. It's so unique and so beautiful to look at. Just I love it. Read some reviews of this movie and a lot of people don't really like the retro-ness injected into modern day. You do see things like in the background that indicate that this is taking place during modern times, even though the costumes and the way it's shot make it look like it's something out of the 70s. What I've read and heard from the director, Anna Biller, that was intentionally done, but I don't know, I like it. But speaking of the director, Anna Biller, homegirl not only wrote and directed the film, but she also edited it. She created the set pieces, the costumes, she created the music for it. To say this movie was a labor of love for her would be the biggest understatement. Next movie I want to talk about is Satan's Slaves. This is an Indonesian horror movie that follows a family that is seemingly being haunted by their mother who recently passed from an illness she suffered with for years. This is a movie that makes you think it's one thing and then it's gonna take the sharpest of left turns and it becomes something completely other. Not just your typical Asian ghost story. There are some genuine frights in the film. There are a few jump scares, but I feel like they're so well done that's like, they're not annoying and they're definitely not overused. Also, the set design for this movie is also amazing and the music is very well done. think on Shudder there is a dubbed and a subbed version. I haven't watched the dubbed version. I typically don't watch those just because I don't prefer them. I watch with the subtitles. So that's gonna be how I'm gonna suggest it to you, but you do you. There's both options on Shudder. Y'all know I had to include an anthology on this list. I want to suggest Southbound to anybody. This particular anthology has 5 interlocking tales following travelers on a stretch of desolate desert highway. The interlocking part is what I like most about this anthology. Each segment kind of bleeds into the next one, or you'll have a common character that ends out one segment and jump starts the next one. That, and I just love the desert highway setting. A long stretch of highway where buildings and people are few and far between are the perfect place, like the perfect setting for scary shit to happen. Southbound might be the most underrated movie on this list, I think. I never hear anybody talking about this movie. You should watch it. If you don't watch anything else on this list, watch Southbound, please. This next one is a movie I've also talked about, I feel like quite a few times, like periodically, wherever it's pertinent for me to talk about it, I'll try and mention it, and it's All Cheerleaders Die. This movie is directed by Chris Syverson and Lucky McKee and follows a group of cheerleaders that, you guessed it, die. But they come back from the dead to exact revenge on the football players that caused their untimely demise. If that sounded campy and cheesy, you would be correct. And that's kind of the point. It's like the horror comedy equivalent of like Mean Girls, I would say. It's funny, it's gory, it's got some not so great CGI, but it's not used too much to the point where it's, you know, it's ruining your experience of the movie. And this is just like a good time movie. It's just a good time. If you want something silly and fun to watch that's not gonna be all like doom and gloom, especially right now, I feel like this is like the perfect time to watch like some horror comedies and some kind of lighthearted movies. This is the one you need to watch. The next movie I want to mention is Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. This is a mockumentary found footage meta slasher. And honestly, that should be all I have to say to sell you on this movie. But it is all of those things. Basically, in this movie, a documentary crew is following Leslie Vernon. Vernon is the next generation of slasher killers, and the crew is documenting how he finds his final girl and eliminates her friends. It's essentially like a behind the scenes look at how a typical cliche slasher is constructed, but from the point of view of the actual slasher. I feel like as far as like self-reflexive movies go or meta slashers go, this is, I would put this at the most unique, I think. It's clever, it's funny. Leslie Vernon is probably one of the more charismatic killers I've seen in a movie. I love him so much. You're not supposed to, but I love him. I don't care. I feel like this is one of those movies that I every now and then will hear people talking about, and I'm always like, oh my god, I love that movie. But I feel like not enough people talk about this. Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's on my favorite shelf. If you saw my long ass tour of my books and horror DVDs, that's how much I love this movie. So watch it. The next one I want to talk about is Digging Up the Marrow. I recently talked about this movie in my Masters of Horror video on Adam Green, which I'll link up here somewhere. But really quickly, if you didn't watch that video, this is a mockumentary starring Adam Green as himself and Ray Wise as a crazy old man who unveils an underground world of monsters to Green. And it's just like a cool found footage movie with some amazing like practical like makeup effects in terms of the monsters. The monsters were based on the art of Alex Pardee, and those monsters were brought to life in the best way. They look so good. I just wish like you could have seen them the whole movie, but of course there's got to be like some build up to when you actually see them, but they look so good, and it's just like, it's a unique little found footage movie that you definitely need to watch. Next movie I want to talk about, again, kind of like Behind the Mask. I will occasionally hear people talk about this movie, but I just feel like it's not been talked about enough, and that is Deathgasm. Deathgasm is a New Zealand horror comedy about some teenage boys who make up a metal band. They find an ancient piece of music that, when played, summons an evil entity, turns their towns into possessed zombie-like creatures. I think this movie is hilarious, and I like only the most like basic of like metal bands slash songs. So I can only imagine that actual metalheads hopefully find this hilarious. I don't know. I would I would hope you know this movie is just all in good fun, but it's got a healthy amount of gore, lots of crude humor, and a sex toy fight scene. Yes, you heard that right. It's super fun and full of the just dry ass New Zealand humor that I love. It's definitely another one of those like fun, kind of mindless horror comedies to watch to get your mind out of like how fucked the world is right now. Speaking of things being fucked, the next movie I want to talk to you about is In the Mouth of Madness. This movie is hard to describe because it starts off like with a normal kind of like premise and plot, and it just goes off the rails. Basically, an insurance investigator is sent out to find what he can about a popular horror author's disappearance, and things get insane as he realizes the author's fictional world and characters that he's created are bleeding into reality. Kind of. That's the best I can do at describing this movie. Without just telling you the whole movie. Honestly, I feel like all I have to say about this movie, if you don't know about it already, is that it's a John Carpenter movie, and you guys would pretty much all be on board. And I feel like you probably already know about the movie, but in terms of like John Carpenter movies, I feel like this one gets talked about like the least. Like seriously, you just need to watch for Sam Neill's performance alone. And you know what, like maybe the world in this movie is a little fucked also, but I feel like this is the type of like world fucking that this is the type of crazy reality that we need to watch to like put everything in perspective. Like everything's crazy and scary right now, but at least it's not like this. And finally, of course, I had to throw in a South Korean horror movie in there, A Tale of Two Sisters. Like I said, this is a South Korean horror movie. It's about a girl who is recently released from a mental institution who returns home with her sister only to have to deal with her stepmother and the apparent ghosts haunting their house. This is another one that I don't really want to spoil because, as you would imagine, there is a pretty big twist towards the end. And yes, maybe that twist is also a little bit cliche, but I like it still like brings something unique to the table, even though like when you boil it down, it's, you know, it's a twist that's been done to death. So kind of like Satan's Slaves, it like takes something that's cliche and manages to put a unique twist on it. And I really like that. And again, just one of those movies, like when I hear people talk about South Korean horror movies, I feel like this one doesn't get brought up as much as it needs to be. Like I said, hopefully you haven't seen or heard about at least one of those movies, and I've given you at least one new thing to watch to kind of pass the time while you're stuck at home. If you're like me and you're also into documentaries, Shudder has some pretty great horror documentaries on there. They got Crystal Lake Memories, I think it's called, which goes through every single Friday the 13th film. Similarly, they have Never Sleep Again, which goes through every single Nightmare on Elm Street movie. They have Horror Noir, which is like, it's kind of like the Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue, but for Black horror history, and it's extremely well done. I also really recommend Why Horror, which is on there, and Killer Legends if you want something that's not necessarily about horror movies, but it's still gonna like freak you out a little bit. Killer Legends is really good. If there are some what you consider hidden gems on Shudder that you know about, share them in the comments. We all need stuff to watch to get us through our self-quarantining, so help each other out in the comments. Like I said, I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy out there, and stay home as much as you can. Really quick, I want to thank my creepy patron peeps for their support of my channel. Thank you guys so much. If you want to find out the perks to being a creepy patron peep yourself, you can follow that link in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here, if you're lurking. Become a creepy peep today. I post videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you for listening to me talk. I will see you guys very soon, and until then, stay strange. Bye.